Hi, so today we're going to be going over our case study of deviance in the flag room. My name is Victoria Peck.
And my name is Hannah Rivera.
Okay, so to begin, I'm going to start by talking about the different types of deviance and how it relates to our experiment. The basic definition of deviance is the violation of social norms, but there are a lot of other definitions that we have talked about. So Howard Becker's labeling theory basically says that deviant behavior is a behavior which is labeled as such. This means that it is the label that is given by those around you that really is important, and it shows how fluid the term can be as it can change in different social settings. Ronald Ackers focuses on deviance as behavior which deviates in a disapproved direction. And what he's talking about is that it needs to be serious enough to warrant a response from society. So if you're being deviant in a disapproved direction but it's not that serious, it might not be labeled as such. Alex Teo is kind of similar. He explains deviance as a behavior that is deemed as such by the public, and it can range in severity. So again, very heavily focusing on how the public is defining it. Robert K. Merton focuses on deviance as a behavior which deviates from norms within one's social class. This can either be a positive or a negative variation, but only within social classes. And then John Kitsos says that deviance is not necessarily the acts or behaviors of the individual, but the reaction that it brings. So again, it's about the individual, but also about the reaction that society is giving to that. Some important points and how these relate to our experiment. Basically, the label of deviance is dependent on a lot of different factors. Things like the setting, the audience, who's there, who the deviant person is, what their social status is, a bunch of things like that. And then the term deviance doesn't solely rely on the deviant labeled individual or on the conforming labeled individual. It's a reaction between both of them, and that decides what is deviant and what is not.
Okay, and now we are going to be discussing the theory and literary review. Alright, so in the article, Can Normalization Save Society, or at least the Sociology of Deviance by Joel Best, he states that themes consistent with abortion, homosexuality, and gambling were labeled as deviant. He also said that deviance can evolve and change depending on its surroundings, and that him, along with other sociologists, find it difficult to really analyze deviance because of how it can shift and change depending on whatever it may be. Microaggressions commonly lead to labels of deviance, and this method is often used to keep those people in both majority and minority in check, because the people in the majority don't want to be like the people in the minority, so they act right, and people in the minority are discriminated against and oppressed into being the minority. We will be discussing the next article that we used, and it is called Deviance and Dissent in Groups by Jolanda Jetton and Matthew J. Hornsey. Actions that are considered deviant are contextually determined and may change with time. So this is very similar to what Joel Best in the last article was saying, because deviance can change depending on whatever the situational factors are, and Jetton agrees with this. And as well as that, the label of deviance cannot be permanently attached to a single action since other factors play a role. All right, and the third literary source that we used was named Delinquency, Theories and Behaviors. And Simo stated that there are two forms of delinquency, which are hidden and sanctioned. Now, hidden delinquency is acts that a social group ignores or is not aware of, and then sanctioned delinquency is acts that are seen and published so people know about them. And Also, social control theory is the knowledge we possess about the personal and demographic characteristics of the offender. CMOS also stated this. So assumptions can be made about individuals that lead to the perception that an act is more or less deviant. And as well as that, physical characters or other factors could draw out different reactions from a sample.
Okay, so now we're going to get into our actual experiment. So the population for this experiment is all students at the university, but the sample is going to be those students who were present in the flag room at the time of our deviant acts. And then we took many different trials of this, so the sample is going to vary from trial to trial. Our purpose was to disrupt the environment of the flag room using deviant acts in order to collect data on the sample's reactions. The flag room is the setting. It's a quiet place where students go to work and to study. The main focal point of this building is of the space is the grand piano. So people usually go there to study, to listen to music. The people who play know what they're doing and they play harder sequences. Our trial times for each experiment was approximately 30 seconds. The socially expected etiquette of the setting is that students are quiet, non-disruptive, and tidy, and the music being played on the piano is generally that is harder and it sounds really good. And our deviant act decided that we wanted to try to disrupt the flag room's etiquette by playing disruptively on the grand piano, just kind of randomly banging around the keys, making a lot of noise, just to see how people would react. This is a very basic template showing what the flag room setup is. So basically over here we have the grand piano surrounded by a bunch of seating. E1, 2, and 3 are each experimenter. So E1, experimenter 1 was at the piano. This was the experimenter who was banging around on the keys, actually doing the deviant act. Experimenter 2 was recording videos of the reactions and taking it all into account from close to the piano, and then experimenter 3 was sitting further away. At the beginning of this project, we had 3 experimenters, but now we're left with only 2 as one student dropped the class. But at the time that we conducted this, we did have 3 experimenters. And then for this experiment, our hypothesis was that students with headphones on would probably would not notice what was happening, but the students without headphones would look up abruptly from their work. They'd be a bit confused, possibly whisper around to see what's going on. We thought the piano players might be offended by our lack of respect for their instrument or because we weren't really being respectful of them. And then we thought it was also possible for the core to have a negative reaction.
Next is our analysis. So we did different trials and multiple things were noted about it, but the main reaction, no matter what, was ignorance, because people in the flag room often have headphones in or they're studying, they're really immersed in their studies, and we just didn't get the attention of them because of how immersed they were. They just completely didn't know that the distraction was happening. And we do believe that if the experiment was longer, there might have been more reaction. There was also a small group of individuals who left the flag room. Now, it's also worth mentioning that there were 2 piano players already occupying the piano when the experimenter walked up and requested to have a go at it. And they were very polite and were not negative at all. We expected them to feel disrespected in a way because of such bad playing that we were doing on their instrument. All right, and then after the experiment was completed, there were no further reactions. The flag room went on as it usually does. Now, John Kitsusi's interpretation of deviance is the best reflection of this experiment, and this is because the focus is not being placed on the experimenter. Instead, the focus is being placed on the reactions that it receives from the observers and the people there who give the reactions. The significance of this setting was the goal of this experiment was to be loud and disruptive in an environment that is known for being tranquil and used for studying. So if we went to, say, an A&M football game and we were being loud and crazy, jumping up and down, that would be normal, but not in the flag.
Okay, so now for our conclusion. So the difference between our hypothesis and the results of this experiment were pretty evident. We had a lot of extreme reactions that we theorized were going to happen but did not happen, and the majority of individuals didn't react at all. We also thought that the piano players would possibly be cold and judgy, not very opening to us, but they were rather cordial and nice about our lack of experience with the piano. We also didn't expect students to actually physically leave the flag room, so that was a very surprising development in this experiment. The limitations of our experiment was that we couldn't do anything financially destructive or illegal, just to make sure that we followed ethical guidelines in sociology and experiments, but also because we are university students and on a university campus. Some things we could do to improve this research, if we did again, would be to lengthen the Deviant Act so that there's more reaction. Having a fourth experimenter could also be helpful in gathering more data, and announcing the act before the experiment could ensure attention. The importance of our experiment is in the understanding of deviance in different social settings. It is very important to note that in this social setting, it wasn't seen as that deviant, but in other ones with different people participating, different experimenters, a different sample, it could have changed a lot. And then this is just a quick list of our sources, so I'll give you guys a second to go ahead and look over those. Thank you for your time.